Hello everyone, and welcome to my General Hospital Today channel. Anna Devane had always believed she'd seen the darkest truths Port Charles had to offer, but nothing prepared her for the night she found Sam McCall half-conscious in the dim, metallic silence of that abandoned safe house on the outskirts of Ithaca, where the wind rattled the old rafters like skeletal fingers begging to be acknowledged. And as she crouched beside Sam, mud-smeared, disoriented, trembling with the stubborn strength of a woman who refused to die, Anna felt the familiar burn at the back of her neck that signaled she had stepped into something far larger than a simple rescue mission, and certainly far more dangerous than the Bureau had hinted. Sam's eyes fluttered open, their usual sharp fire muted under exhaustion, and when she rasped, "Anna." "Jason, he can't know yet." A chill rolled through Anna's bones, because the last time Sam had begged her to keep anything from Jason Morgan, lives were lost and half of Port Charles burned from the fallout. But Anna didn't argue, she simply gathered Sam into her arms, steadied her, and guided her out of that hellish structure, every instinct screaming that they were being watched, hunted, timed by an enemy who understood them better than they understood themselves. And though Sam tried to explain, words spilling from her lips in fragmented pieces like broken glass, Anna could barely assemble the picture except for one thing. Sam knew something catastrophic, something tied to Jason, and someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to make sure she didn't make it home to tell him. The helicopter ride back to Port Charles was tense, lit only by the eerie crimson glow of the emergency beacon and the rhythmic thumping of rotor blades slicing the night. Sam clung to consciousness, muttering fragmented warnings. "Not who you think, he wasn't supposed to survive, they lied to Jason from the beginning," and Anna, seasoned in deception yet shaken by the gravity in Sam's voice, held her hand firmly, promising she'd handle everything even as dread gathered in her stomach like wet cement. Landing on the General Hospital rooftop, Anna ushered her inside, bypassed the usual screening with curt orders and even curter glares, and within minutes Sam was stabilized by Dr. Terry Randolph, who shot Anna a look that silently demanded answers, but Anna only shook her head. There was no time, not when Sam kept gasping Jason's name like an urgent prayer that refused to be ignored. Meanwhile, Jason, unaware of the storm forming around him, stood in the dimly lit pier warehouse reviewing shipments for Sunny, a routine night, quiet, unremarkable, and when Anna arrived, trench coat whipping behind her like a battle flag, he knew instantly something was wrong, because Anna Devane never sought him out unless the world was about to shift off its axis, and when she said, "It's Sam. We need to talk," everything inside Jason tightened like a coiled wire ready to snap. The drive to GH was a blur of taut silence, headlights streaking through the night while Jason demanded answers Anna couldn't yet give. She refused to say more until Sam could speak safely, and though Jason clenched the steering wheel hard enough for his knuckles to bleach, he didn't push, because when it came to Sam, every worst fear in his life tended to prove true. The moment he saw her, pale, bruised, eyes sunken with trauma, Jason felt something cold and feral rise within him, the old instinct to hunt and destroy whoever dared touch someone he loved. But when Sam whispered his name, that coldness turned to raw devastation. She grabbed his wrist with trembling fingers and told him the truth, haltingly at first, then with growing desperation, as Anna stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed, jaw clenched, watching two lives unravel simultaneously. Sam revealed that the threat Jason thought he eliminated months ago, the covert group disguised as a humanitarian project, the one that had used brainwashing technology on hostages, the one tied to the bioweapon crisis, had not only survived but had shifted focus entirely onto him, not because of Sunny, not because of the mob, not even because of Carly or any of the usual Port Charles connections, but because of Jason himself. They needed him alive. They had rebuilt him before, manipulated him before, and now Sam discovered they had done something infinitely worse. His resurrection years ago, after the clinic explosion, had never been an accident, never a miracle, never the desperate rescue story he had been told. It had been orchestrated, engineered, and kinda purchased by a shadow financier known only as C, who had paid millions to recover Jason's body, stabilize him, and implant a contingency that had lain dormant inside him for years. Without detection. Jason froze, breath halting, body going rigid as iron as Sam's confession poured out like a dam finally bursting. She told him she had uncovered documents, recordings, medical logs, transfer payments, proving that Jason had been programmed with a latent neurotrigger, one that could be activated remotely to force him into compliance, memory manipulation, or even violent action without his awareness. The group had planned to use him as their ultimate weapon once their biological tech advanced to the next phase, and when Sam discovered this, she had been captured, interrogated, tortured for names she refused to give, names like Danny, Scout, the people Jason would burn the world for. Jason staggered back, as if the entire room tilted, the foundations of his identity shattering under the weight of betrayal, the idea that his own resurrection had been a setup, that his autonomy had never been fully his, that every choice he'd made since returning to Port Charles might have been influenced by invisible hands. He felt physically ill, a nausea twisting in his gut with brutal force. Anna, who had been investigating the organization independently for months, finally stepped forward, confirming the worst of Sam's account. She admitted she had recently intercepted encrypted transmissions hinting at a sleeper asset in Port Charles coded as JM, but she never imagined it was Jason, not because he was invulnerable, but because the thought of him being used like a weapon, like a pawn, was too horrific to consider. Jason, breathing hard, finally met Anna's gaze with eyes that glinted like broken steel and asked the single question that cut through the entire room: "Can they still activate it?" And the silence that followed was answer enough. Terry, returning with Sam's test results, confirmed traces of a chemical sedative in her bloodstream used only by high-level Black Ops kidnappers, proof that the group was already in motion, and Anna explained that the last transmission she intercepted had indicated a deadline, a scheduled activation window less than 24 hours away. Which meant Jason had less than a day before the switch inside him could flip. The horror of that truth sat like a weight too heavy for words. Sam sobbed, begging Jason to understand she had tried to reach him sooner, that she had risked everything to protect him, that she would rather die than see him manipulated again, and Jason, whose world had just been rewritten in the most brutal way, softened only for her, brushing a thumb across her cheek as he whispered that none of this was her fault, that she had saved him the only way she could. But beneath that tenderness simmered a volcanic rage aimed at the faceless architect who had owned his fate without his consent. The terrible truth didn't end there. Anna finally revealed the part she had dreaded most: she had identified C. And when she spoke the name, one known, respected, even trusted by many in Port Charles, Jason's jaw clenched so violently Anna thought it might crack. Because C was not an outsider. Not a stranger. Not an enemy brought in from the shadows. It was someone whose connection to Port Charles ran deep, someone whose ambitions had always been underestimated, someone whose brilliance masked a moral emptiness terrifying in its scale. Someone Jason had recently crossed paths with without suspecting a thing. The revelation detonated inside him, a shockwave ripping through every memory, every conversation, every hesitant trust he had afforded that individual. Sam's monitors beeped faster as she tried to explain how C had attended his medical reconstruction personally, checking on the experimental tech inside him, ensuring the neurotrigger had bonded to his system, and making sure Jason remained viable, a word that made Jason feel less than human. Anna stepped forward, voice steady but eyes haunted, telling Jason that the Bureau had already mobilized, that they were prepared to take him into protective custody for his safety and everyone else's, but Jason recoiled instantly, refusing to be caged, refusing to be treated like ticking ordnance, insisting that the only way to end this was to confront C directly, on his terms, not theirs. Anna tried to reason with him, explaining that if the trigger activated, he could become a lethal threat to the entire city, to everyone he loved, but Jason only squared his shoulders, jaw set, fire rising in him like a man who had spent his entire life fighting for control only to discover it had been stolen long before he ever realized. Sam's voice, soft but urgent, broke the tension. "Jason, don't do this alone." And Jason, in a rare moment of vulnerability, looked between Sam and Anna, torn between fury and fear, knowing that if he didn't stop this, Port Charles wouldn't just be in danger, it would be destroyed. The terrible truth was out. The countdown had begun. And Jason Morgan, for the first time in his life, wasn't sure if he was fighting an enemy outside, or the one hidden inside himself. Jason didn't sleep that night, not because he didn't want to, but because he couldn't, not with the truth Sam had given him echoing through his mind like a ticking bomb counting down the seconds to detonation. He stood at the window outside Sam's hospital room, fists pressed to the cool glass, watching the faint pulse of her heart monitor as though anchoring himself to its rhythm, because everything else inside him felt dangerously unstable, as if his entire reality had been yanked out from under him and replaced with something jagged, foreign, and unbearably cold. Anna had left briefly to coordinate with the bureau, barking orders into her phone with a precision that betrayed her own growing panic, while Jason replayed Sam's words over and over: the capture, the torture, the files she had seen, the horrifying confirmation that his resurrection had never been about mercy or luck or love, but about ownership, engineering, and the absolute violation of his autonomy. And as he stood there, jaw clenched so tightly he could taste iron in his mouth, he realized that although Sam had told him everything she saw, there was still one piece missing, the most important piece. Why now? Why activate him now, after years of silence? Why risk revealing their involvement just to bring Sam down and expose the truth? Unless they were ready. Unless the next phase had already begun. And that thought sent a chill through him so sharp it felt like a blade pressed to his spine. When Anna returned, she carried a manila folder thick with classified reports, her expression grim enough to confirm his suspicions before she even spoke. She stepped beside him, following his gaze to Sam's sleeping form, and whispered, "We found something you need to see." He didn't speak, he simply followed her into the dim conference room across the hall, where she spread out documents, surveillance stills, and intercepted communications across the table like the pieces of a nightmare puzzle. The organization, codename Helios, had accelerated its operations within the last 48 hours. Shipments of medical equipment had rerouted from Zurich to New York, offshore accounts linked to black budget operations had been drained into a single shell corporation owned by C, and most disturbingly, a set of encrypted files labeled Asset Reclamation Protocol had been scheduled to unlock at precisely 4:17 a.m. tomorrow. Jason knew immediately what that meant. "They're coming for me," he said, voice flat, stripped of all emotion, and Anna didn't deny it. She simply nodded, sliding a photograph toward him, grainy, but unmistakably showing a high-tech briefcase being delivered to a private lab just outside Rochester. The same case Anna believed contained the neural activation hardware designed to trigger the implant inside Jason's brain. He stared at the image, muscles twitching with the instinct to move, to attack, to end this before another second passed, but Anna grabbed his wrist, squeezing hard enough to force him to look at her. "If you go after them alone, you'll play right into their hands," she cautioned. "That trigger could activate at any moment. You wouldn't even know it happened." But Jason pulled his hand away, stepping back like a caged animal resisting a handler, eyes burning with the fury of a man who had been violated on the deepest possible level. He said nothing for a long moment before finally muttering, "I'm not waiting for them to flip a switch and turn me into something I'm not." Anna exhaled heavily, scrubbing a hand across her face before revealing the part she had delayed telling him. The neurotrigger wasn't just dormant. Recent scans on Sam suggested she had been exposed to a synthetic compound that reacted only when in close proximity to the implant. Meaning Sam herself had been used as a delivery system. Not intentionally, never intentionally, but she had been carrying a chemical marker designed to ping the device inside him, confirm its viability, and report back to Helios that he was still active. Jason felt the floor drop out from under him. Sam had been weaponized against him without even knowing. And that realization lit something dangerous inside him, something protective, something murderous. He stormed back into Sam's room, his breath ragged, and when she stirred awake, her eyes full of pain and fear and love all tangled together, he told her everything Anna had said. Sam shook her head violently, tears streaming as she whispered, "Jason, I didn't know, I swear, I didn't know," and Jason cupped her face gently, forcing calm into his voice as he reassured her it wasn't her fault. None of this was her fault, that she was the victim, not the weapon, that he would never blame her for something someone else engineered. But even as he soothed her, he felt the anger inside him boiling hotter, transforming into a firestorm aimed directly at C, at Helios, at anyone who had dared use the woman he loved as a pawn in their twisted project. Once Sam fell back asleep, Jason headed straight to the elevators, ignoring Anna's warning calls behind him, determined to confront the one person who might have answers, Spinelli. If anyone could isolate the device inside him, map its activation capabilities, or hack into Helios' network, it was Spinelli, but when Jason reached the rooftop parking lot, engine roaring as he sped towards Spinelli's safe house, he noticed headlights trailing him, smooth, controlled, precise. Too precise to be random. He took back streets, sharp turns, route changes, but the car stayed with him like a shadow stitched to his bumper, and when he reached the abandoned textile warehouse Spinelli used as a decoy base, Jason slammed the brakes, jumped out with gun drawn, and stalked toward the trailing vehicle, only to find Anna emerging from the driver's door, furious and out of breath. "You are not doing this alone," she snapped, marching up to him with the authority of someone who had spent decades commanding battlefields and Black Ops teams. Jason didn't holster the gun. "You can't stop me." But Anna stepped closer, lowering her voice to a razor-sharp whisper. "It's not about stopping you, it's about keeping you alive long enough to end this the right way." And though Jason hated how much sense that made, he relented just enough to let her follow him inside. Spinelli, wide-eyed and jittery as ever, was horrified when they explained the situation. He immediately dove into his computers, fingers typing at impossible speed as he attempted to access any known signal that might interface with the dormant implant. Hours passed. Graphs spiked. Code cascaded. The screen flickered with encrypted transmissions too sophisticated for even Spinelli to crack on the first attempt. And then, at exactly 2:11 a.m., an alert pinged. A signal had just been broadcast across the eastern seaboard. A test pulse. A ping searching for a receiver. Jason's blood ran cold. It was searching for him. Anna lunged toward the monitors, scanning data, eyes widening as Spinelli decrypted the transmission header. Reclamation cycle initiated. Asset JM prepare for acquisition. Jason stared at those words, feeling something inside him fracture, fear, rage, resignation, it all tangled into one impossible knot. His heartbeat thudded painfully in his chest, and for a split second, he wondered if the implant could feel the signal, if it was already reacting. But Spinelli assured him no, there was no neurological fluctuation yet, meaning they still had a small window. A shrinking window. Anna grabbed her phone, calling in every WSB contact within 100 miles, ordering lockdowns, surveillance sweeps, tactical teams, but before the first confirmation came in, the warehouse lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then cut out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room. Jason's instincts kicked in instantly as he pushed Anna and Spinelli to the ground, gun raised as he listened, counting footsteps, breaths, the faint electrical hum returning as emergency lights flickered on. A drone hovered at the far end of the warehouse, small, silent, gleaming with the unmistakable mark of Helios. And attached beneath it, blinking in rhythmic red pulses, was a device Jason recognized with sickening clarity, an activator. They were trying to force the trigger manually. Jason fired 3 shots, shattering the drone midair, sparks showering the concrete floor, but the damage was already done. Spinelli's monitors glowed with a new alert, activation attempt logged. Metering threshold achieved. Jason felt a faint buzzing behind his right ear, subtle but unmistakable, as though something inside him had just awakened. Anna stared at him, breath catching. "Jason, did you feel that?" He didn't answer. He only whispered, "We're out of time." And with those words, the fate of Port Charles shifted forever. Jason took a step back, steadying himself against the metal support beam as the buzzing behind his ear intensified for a moment, then faded into an eerie stillness that was somehow worse than the noise itself, because it felt like anticipation, like something inside him was waiting. Spinelli scrambled across the floor to his equipment, rebooting servers and scanning Jason's vitals with a handheld device, his hands shaking so badly he nearly dropped it twice. The data streamed in jagged bursts, revealing microscopic electrical spikes firing deep within Jason's neural pathways, subtle but deliberate, as if the implant were testing its limits, stretching awake after years of dormancy. Anna watched the readings with growing horror, her voice tight as piano wire when she said, "They didn't just ping you, they primed you." Jason swallowed hard, jaw clenched as he forced himself to focus, to breathe, to anchor his mind in the present moment instead of spiraling into panic. He wasn't going to let Helios turn him into a puppet, not now, not ever. "Can you shut it down?" he asked Spinelli, and the hacker shook his head frantically, hair falling into his eyes as he typed. Not yet, I need more time, stone cold, more power, more access. This network is beyond anything I've ever seen, it's rewriting itself faster than I can trace it. The warehouse lights flickered again, and Anna moved instantly, positioning herself between Jason and the nearest window in case a second drone launched an attack. We need to move, she said sharply. Now. Before they send a ground team. But Jason shook his head. If we run, they'll track me. If we hide, they'll activate me. The only way out of this is to take the fight to them. Anna stared at him, seeing the resolve in his eyes, the same deadly focus that had carried him through battles no human should have survived, and she realized nothing she said would change his mind. Jason wasn't afraid for himself, he was afraid of what he might become. And that meant he was willing to end this war by any means necessary. Even if it killed him.